Hi everyone, it's Jan with What You Make It, and I have missed you guys. Spring is just a crazy time of year for me in our business. I do a lot of traveling and am gone so much of the time, home for a couple of days, sometimes just for a few hours. But I'm about to take my last trip for this spring, and then I'll be back and we will get back onto having a lot more fun in the studio. But today I want to share the way that I created this faux tile as the focal image on this Mother's Day card. It's really fun, created with some violet stamps, and I thought I'd share with you how I did it. I'm using a paper tray ink stamp set called Year of Flowers, and it's the violet stamp set. It comes with a couple sizes of the violets and a couple sizes of leaves, and I'm going to be doing the stamping on a dark purple piece of cardstock, and I'm going to do some white embossing with this. And so I'm using my Versamark ink pad, and I start with the larger elements. When you are creating a background out of multiple stamps, I find that if you start with your larger pieces, then it's easier to fill in with the smaller ones. If you start out with the smaller ones, you find that there probably isn't as much room for those other ones if you reverse that order. So I just kind of went with a few of those violets, and then I made some masks that basically I stamped and then cut them out, and they're not sticking very well because you saw me use my EK Success embossing buddy there to make the anti-static so that the embossing powder would not stick to any place other than where I was doing the stamping. Unfortunately, the downside to that is that when you use it, also your mask doesn't want to stick there. But you know, little determination, you will get there. Now I'm using some white embossing powder. That's why this particular technique really does work better on a dark color of cardstock, but you really could do this on anything. I think it really pops off of a dark background. So I have all of that in place, and then just using a paintbrush to remove those little stray pieces of embossing powder. And you will want to heat it until it is shiny, and that's how you know that it has been heated completely. Now the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to use my Prismacolors to color in. This is a great project if you do not feel super confident in coloring and shading. It's really easy to do this. So you'll notice I'm mostly just scribbling. So it's a great way to go. But the first thing that I did was I took that gray color and I kind of defined my areas by creating that drop shadow. Now when I'm coloring with Copics, I usually create my shadow at the very end, but I find when I'm working on dark paper with line art that doing that shading actually kind of helps me see what areas I'm working with. So I did that first, and now I'm moving in with the greens, and I'm basically working with 2 or 3 colors of the green. I'm going to work with 2 or 3 colors of purple. You can see I'm doing some kind of yellowish gold for the centers. Again, I'm just kind of scribbling over them. This is not a real exact technique. It's one that you can do really quickly. So you can see here that I didn't color all of the violets the same. I did some that were more on the reddish purple side of the violet family, and then I did some that were a little more dark. And I think that actually creates some visual interest. So now all I'm doing is I'm just kind of coloring in, scribbling in. You don't have to be particularly neat. Now let me tell you something about the Prismacolors, because we're going to use a technique that is using odorless mineral spirits. And that, some people call it Gamsol, but that basically will help blend any of your colors together. And that's one of the reasons why you can be really pretty messy with it. But you also don't have to use Prismacolors. I have done the same technique with what we used to call map colors back in school. You know, just any colored pencil that is a wax base will do. And I'm using a paper stump, and I just take an emery board or something and file off the color. That's how I keep it clean. You dip it in the Gamsol, and it's kind of oily, but it's mineral spirits, and it kind of melts the waxiness, causes it to blend together. So you can see how easy. Now all of a sudden all my scribbling begins to look like I was actually a little bit of an artist there. So we are artists, aren't we? We are artists. Even if we only have about 8 minutes in our studio at any given time, we're artists by cracky. So I'm just going around and I'm blending all of my shaded areas. And I'm actually going to work in the opposite direction. With the purples, I just used one stump, but you'll notice that I am finishing with the outline. Now I am going and I'm just blending that shadow out, that gray shadow shading out. It just kind of makes it blend out into nothing. Now I do want to tell you something here. You really and truly want to make sure that it has totally dried. There is no more of that mineral spirit that is wet. Don't use your heat tool on it. It's very flammable. So set it aside, let it dry before you start this step. So now we're going to make this faux tile, and you'll see that I've put my Versamark down, and I have put UT, ultra thick embossing enamel. You want to use the thicker version of it, not the fine detail. And you also saw that I put a little bit of temporary adhesive down on a piece of paper so that I could hold it with another piece of paper. You don't want to be, when you're covering the full surface of something like this tile, you don't want your tweezers there in the middle of it kind of mucking it up. The first time you do that first layer, I think you saw there that it was really kind of bumpy. We're going for a glass ceramic-like finish. So I go through this process at least 3 times, depending on if it really is good and thick and glassy and shiny by the time I finish my 3rd one. And you can see here how it's just melting really beautifully and becoming that nice thick covering, like this is a tile that has a ceramic glaze over it. So there you see, look how nice and smooth it looks. Super simple technique, but you can create really stunning focal images for your cards or for your mixed media projects. I used this one on a Mother's Day card. I cut a little die cut of a trellis, tucked that in behind there, and I also did a little strip of glitter. Another really easy technique, I just use a 1/4 inch wide strip of that really sticky score pal tape and sprinkle some glitter on it. But very easy way to put together a focal image. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have missed you. Oh, how I have missed you. And I have some really fun plans to share with you in June. I have one more trip I need to make, and when I get back from that, hopefully we will get back on schedule. I have a fun little thing to share with you, hopefully by the end of this week. You all take care and be sure and save some time for creative play.